over the past 250 years, chess has seen some pretty significant games, some beautiful openings, some incredible endgame techniques, and some absolute masterpieces. And usually, when you think of these immortal games, you think of the ones in the recent 50 to 100 years, and there are plenty of those. But today I thought it would be interesting to go back in time all the way until what I would regard as one of the first incredible and beautiful and spectacular chess games, and this occurred in 1788. So here's the situation. We have two people who have very different jobs. One of them is a physicist, one of them is a politician, and they pick up chess sort of as a hobby. It wasn't a profession back then. With the white side, I'm talking about Thomas Bowder. With the black side, I'm talking about Henry Conway. And they choose in London, 1788, let's start a game. Now, with the white side, we see e4, and as a response, e5 and bishop c4. And you can probably already sense that the f7 pawn becomes very important and very significant quickly, because although in modern day chess you don't go for these quick attacks, back then, if you want to have fun and if you want to go for a fun game, there was nothing wrong with playing this. There was no theory, again, at least not to the extent that we have theory now. So bishop c4, bishop c5, black is going for quite similar things. And here d3, I think a calm move, very logical, supporting the center. c6, super strong move as well. I mean, these are not amateurs, right? They know how to play and they know some level of strategy. They're going for d5, queen e2, supporting the center a bit further, and here f4. And this was a very typical move back then. You saw this sort of with the idea of the king's gambit, this e4, f4 combination to open up the f-file, combined with a bishop on c4, and go for some quick attacks. So this sort of is very reminiscent of that opening. And after bishop takes f4, we saw the move queen to b6. Okay, this is already posing a pretty significant question for white. There's pressure on b2, there's pressure on g1. Now, there's only one move that holds everything together, and that is the move c3. You're defending, of course, the b2 threat, and in regards to the pressure on the knight, there's a spectacular move here, the move d4. You're simply shutting down this bishop, and it has no escape square. It's going to have to essentially give itself up. So this would have been a way for white to hold on. Instead, they decide queen f3. Who cares about the knight? Who cares about the pawn on b2 and the rook that will be also taken after that? And indeed, black jumps at the opportunity to take the pawn. Okay, white decides, let's begin with the attack. Bishop to f7. Of course, you cannot take this because, among other things, there's simply the issue of the queen that will be lost. So the king moves instead to d7. Now there's a small issue for white. The rook is hanging, and it's not clear how you continue with the attack. And so what white does here, which I absolutely love, even though this is not objectively good, and in fact, white is already losing because they're losing so much material, but from just a strategical or maybe practical standpoint, they decide, let's just get more pieces in the game, right? Knight to e2, king to d2, and then knight to c3. Giving away another full rook, which black first takes the knight and then takes the rook. But now we get an important position of the game where white is down so much material, but every piece they have is in the game. And this idea of compensation for material or initiative is very important, and I already think you see that in such an early stage of chess in this game here, right? You see the fact that every piece for black, aside from the queen, is lying on the back rank, and so even though they have more material, if you count up the pieces, that doesn't actually play a very tangible or significant role. And white pounces at this opportunity. They go queen to g4 check, and then take on g7, and their idea is not necessarily to take the rook in the corner or the knight and win back the material, although in some cases that is something you can resort to kind of claim back some material while still having some attack. But rather their idea is to open things up further, right? There's now this idea of, some discovery with an attack that will continue to occur. And so black decides very logically, develop pieces, block the attack on the king. Okay, we get to another important position because here, according to the engine, white should have taken the knight, right? take some material for the trouble. You're still down material, but at least now you have something that you can claim if the attack does not end up working out. But what instead Thomas decided to do with the white side here is not to take the material, but bring the queen back to g3 and take this idea of initiative or compensation to a whole new level, right? The idea of taking on d6 is in fact scary, and the move b6 is played. Very nice defensive resource, because now after you take, the king can try to run a bit further to b7, but knight to b5. Incredible, brilliant move here. And let me be again clear, white is losing if black finds the correct response, which in this case, by the way, is king to b8, with the idea that after you can, for example, take and pose some discovery, a5, bring the king a bit more breathing room, and there's no actual way with so much squares now for black's king to trap it completely. But instead, the move knight to b5 complicates the situation, and black here fell, frankly, right for white's trap, because they take the knight, but oh no, bishop takes d6, and now everything collapses. You cannot run back to the center, because the bishop will cut the king, and the queen will be able to deliver some deadly blows. So the king tries to run to the side, but now the other bishop activates, and one of the other reasons that I absolutely love this game is that aside from the fact that white has sacrificed so much material, but the king is in the corner, and there is in fact now very much deadly compensation, it's also the fact that you see the power of the bishops, right? An idea, a strategical idea that only really comes in far later in the history of chess, but you already see it very much occur here, where even though white is down material, the fact that their bishops are centralized, they're boxing in this king, and all you need now is the queen to somehow transport itself to a3 and mate would happen. So the power of a bishop against an exposed king in an open board, you see that bishop pair dynamic play a very significant role here. And after the move d4, indeed, mate is threatened, and a mate that is very difficult to stop. The move b4 was played here. Logical defensive resource, but it doesn't do enough, because after bishop takes b4, queen a3 is coming with mate. You know, if black does something random, we're going to be able to take here and mate with c4, again, largely because of the bishop pair that just controls so many of the squares here. So instead, after the move b4 and bishop takes, the move king b5 was played, but it doesn't do enough. We just switch the order now. We play c4, a nice move, sacrificing the bishop because mate is on the horizon. So I wanted to share this game. And I'm very open to your suggestions on whether you'd want to see more games from the past, because I think aside from being able to just learn something from them, obviously some tactical or strategical ideas, it's also just very nice and interesting. I would even say very fascinating to see how the different ideas that we hold so valuable today, how they did appear, in fact, in older chess games, even though we very often do not give credit to these older players from being able to have these strategical and deep foundational ideas. In some cases they did, and I think this game is a nice illustration of that. So let me know what you think of this video here. If you like the game that I showed and you want to see more games from the past, let me know down below. Subscribe if you're new around here, like the video if you learned something new from it, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.